Shabbat Shalom. First, a little bit of housekeeping. I know it can be very confusing when I'm walking around, but I follow your lead. If you put out your fist for a fist bump, I'll fist bump. You want a high five, I'll give you a high five. You want a handshake, I'll put out a handshake. It doesn't matter what the person in front of you did. I accommodate all versions of greeting. I know that different people have different preferences, and I'm good with everything. Don't worry, I sanitize before and after every lap of the sanctuary. But that's not what we're here to talk about, although it is strangely connected in ways that we may or may not come back to. Because I want to ask you a hypothetical, purely hypothetical. Please don't think it's anything but a hypothetical. Imagine you wanted to start a new softball league. All right, you want to get a softball league because you think people don't get out and exercise enough. And, you know, we need the fresh air, and now that the weather has finally gotten a little mild, this is a good time for it. How would you start up a softball league? What would you do? What steps would you take? Advertise, right? So you go around to the libraries, you go around to the gyms, you go around to the city hall, because everybody stops by city hall to see the notice board, and you staple up softball league forming, right? Give me your list of teams, and you put your email and your phone number on it, and then you sit back and wait for it to happen. Now, is this going to be sufficient in and of itself? Probably not. At least from my own community organizational experiences, just advertising usually doesn't quite make the magic happen. It's a good thing because it helps you pick up all of the random people that don't know about it in some other way, but by itself, rarely is it adequate. So what else could we do to get our softball league off the ground? Okay, we need to get money, right? So we got to make a pitch. Can I get some cash? So you go around to Publix and you ask for donations, and you go to other shops, and maybe you can find a sporting goods store to supply you with some baseballs and some bats and things like that, just to make it a little easier for people, because not everybody's going to have their own glove and other supplies. And, you know, getting a little bit of community buy-in from these organizations always feels good. And then you can put on your advertising, sponsored by Dick's Sporting Goods and such.
You need to make personal contact and recruit allies.
You need to make personal contact and recruit allies. The flyers alone are not going to be sufficient. The funds that you raise are not going to be sufficient. Both are necessary, but not sufficient. Ultimately, you're going to have to either pick up the phone, or stop people in the street, or gather around other friends that you already have and say, hey guys, we need to do this. And through that intimate connection, that personal bond, then you can begin to touch more and more people and attract them into this overall endeavor. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing an obvious solution though. What if instead of doing that, instead of, you know, getting together with my friends and talking about it and then getting their friends to come in, what if instead I went into a busy area, maybe a shopping mall, and I took out a big megahorn and a gun, and I said, everybody better join the softball league or I start shooting. Is that, I mean, that's faster, right? You're going to get sign-ups instantly, right then and there. You're not all encouraging violent threats as being the solution to the problem?
Did anyone say social media?
Did anyone say social media? We're going to put that under advertising. Although in the hands of some, social media is also a source of violent threats. But this is the overarching arc of the first three parshiot of the Torah. Is God is trying to get a softball league going. That is to say, God wants people to be righteous. He wants them to be with the game. He wants them to step up to the bat and be able to get a home run. And he began with sort of general advertising. All right, you're humans now. You get to make choices. Go for it. And poof, nobody was on the right team. Nobody was playing by the rules. And so God went, fine, megaphone and gun. You're all going to die because you're not doing this right. Massive flood. And immediately after the flood, people are still not on the game. They're still not following the rules. So God had to scratch his head and say, okay, if I can't just advertise, and if I can't just bully, then what am I going to do? Abraham, you're a nice guy. I'm going to start with you. If I can sell you on this idea, if I can get you and your wife on board with this idea, if I can get you, your wife, and maybe your family on board with this idea, then maybe we can begin to spin something up. Maybe we can begin to get some traction. Because right now, just shouting from the rooftops isn't working, and pouring water on the whole planet isn't working. So I'm going to instead focus on one person, one family at a time. Now, as we talked about last week, and as anybody who has paid any attention to any of my adult education classes might have also known, this is not that God was figuring this out, right? God is not a dummy. God knows a whole lot more than all of us because it's in God's nature to know, unlike the rest of us who have to actually work at it. Which means God was not surprised that these were the results, but humanity had to understand that this was the method that was going to get actual results. Because humanity, like we talked about last week, might be looking for a flood to save them from their troubles. They might be looking for the giant lightning bolts in the sky to take care of all of their enemies and problems. And God had to say, I'm not doing that. Every time we see that rainbow, God is saying, I've told you what you need to do, and I'm not fixing your problems for you. Get to work. Here in the story of Abraham, we are being given specific instructions of how to actually get to work. Because God is saying, it's not going to happen just by shouting. It's not going to happen just by advertising. It's going to happen with personal contact. The preeminent virtue that is attributed to Abraham, I mean, he's considered a great guy in so many ways, but in Jewish tradition, when we want to sum up what would we put on Abraham's tombstone, and we know where that is, what would we put on it as his outstanding virtue that differentiated him from so many others? It is hospitality. It is hospitality. He is gracious to others that come near him. He is gracious, as we saw in this week's Torah portion with Lot, where he is willing to say, look, if you want to go that way, I'll go this way. You go that way, I'll go this way. It's okay. We can't stay together because the land's not big enough for our flocks, but you pick first. It's okay. You get to choose the first slice of cake. I'll take the second slice of cake. And then, of course, when we see him engaged with the angels in next week's Torah portion, he is running back and forth to be gracious and accommodating to them. And when we see him behave in other aspects that are perhaps less famous, well, after he rescues Lot and all of the other prisoners that were taken during the war of Sodom and Gomorrah, this is before their destruction, what does Abraham do? He releases them. He doesn't extort them. He doesn't look for ransom. He doesn't look for anything other than to save Lot and to save the others who had been taken as captives and release them back into freedom. Abraham is somebody that is marked by that true essence of hospitality, not showing off to guests, not trying to impress other people with what he has and say, hey, look at all the stuff I've got that I can give away for free, but to actually make other people feel good. And this is God's sales pitch. Judaism should make people feel good. When you walk into this room, you should feel good. When you see somebody else in this room that you don't know, you should be thinking, I need to make them feel good. If you see somebody do something that maybe you don't agree with, oh, they're wearing their kippah a little differently, you're still under obligation. Job number one, to make them feel at home here. We can have a discussion about different forms of head covering or whatnot, but nowhere in that discussion should come any animosity or any anger or any pain, because God's told us those don't work, right? Shouting and flooding and lightning bolts is not the way that we get people to be part of the family. It's not the way that we draw people closer to God. Our softball league is going nowhere if all we've got is a bullhorn. And Abraham is the anchor for this. He is the poster child for this. because God wants us to know this is how Judaism starts. It doesn't start at Sinai, except in the legalistic sense. But in terms of growing the proper environment where Judaism can thrive, it has to start multiple generations in the past. With this guy named Abraham and his wife who was willing to put up with all of his craziness, that were willing to open their doors for others around them, that was willing to make that personal connection, that personal contact with everybody that he could, to bring them closer to goodness. Now, you may be saying, but wait a minute, Rabbi, not everybody who met Abraham became Jewish. I mean, the family grew kind of slowly, all the way up until we got 12 kids out of Jacob. But prior to that, it was a kind of meh. I mean, yes, he had the herdsmen and other people that work with them, but Hagar and Ishmael, kind of a wash. They didn't stick around and become Jewish. Esau, his grandson, again, not exactly sticking around. So is this really the best way to make the team grow? Well, you're missing the second point that this parasha is trying to give us. The Torah is not only about growing our personal team, known as the Jews. The Torah is also about helping other people grow close to God, even if they aren't Jewish. That there are multiple ways to relate to God in this world. Some of them have a very heavy Jewish flavor, all the different denominations and variations of our people. But a whole lot more can reach out to God in their own way and still find that connection. So the children of Ishmael and the children of Esau are all encouraged, inspired, and hopefully guided by Abraham and his way to reach out to God. And if they stumble and fall, well, we've done so too. We know that the only answer is that of Abraham, which is to pick each other up and say, we still love and care for you. We are still walking on this path together. Parallel, you've got your way, we've got ours. But we are not going to use violence, anger, or anything else, and we're not going to expect God to come down and lightning bolt those that with whom we disagree on different points. Abraham is here at the beginning to show us what it will be at the end. That Judaism and godliness in general are built upon a love of others that allows us to feel the love of God and to turn that into action. And we're going to see that's not always so easy, but that is for next week and the week after and the week after and the week after. A reminder again that right now we're doing kind of a special discussion of looking at the total arc of the story of Genesis. We'll keep coming back and looking at these different individuals and incidents to help us unravel this, because too often we focus down on the details of a particular moment in one of our ancestors' lives, and we forget what the Torah is trying to tell us by the totality of these stories, of how it is trying to guide us here in 2025 in things that were planted, that were built, that were established 3,000 years ago. Shabbat Shalom.